It's Juneteenth.
It's Juneteenth, Malika. And today on CAN TV, FDR Community Foundation, it's normally a day that we honor young people and listen to the voices of young people. Mm-hmm. But today, we need to make sure that young people know a little more history. And so we decided to do what? Celebrate
Juneteenth.
Many people had no idea about Juneteenth, and no fault of their own.
Really?
No fault of their own. Unbelievable,
Yeah, I just learned about Juneteenth, I would say, in the past, 10-15 years. I just was hearing about Juneteenth, but still, right. I didn't know really what Juneteenth was about.
You're absolutely right. I think there's no history books that really celebrated Juneteenth. It was probably, like you said, that people would throw it out there like Juneteenth, and just let it be. But, we should say kudos to all those people across the country that understood Juneteenth for the many, many years, and they were fighting and fighting and fighting to get Juneteenth recognized in our country. Congratulations on never giving up, because now Juneteenth is a federal holiday, which will be observed on Monday if it falls on a Sunday. So guess what? Malika, people will have the ability to have the day off just like every national holiday to commemorate Juneteenth and what it means to this country.
That is excellent. I love it. I love it. I love it. Even in getting guests on, we feature a youth every Friday. A lot of the youth are like busy with events. I loved it.
Absolutely. So just teeing it up, Juneteenth traces its origins back to Galveston, Texas, where on June 19, 1865, Union soldiers led by Major General Gordon Granger led the city with news that the Civil War had ended and slaves were now free. The announcement came 2.5 years after President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, that freed slaves in Confederate states. The announcement came 2.5 years after President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation of January 1st, 1863, that freed slaves in the Confederate states. So in those Confederate states, Malika, we know that they held the people enslaved and in bondage, even though they were free.
Did those people get reparations? Those family members that have survived that?
You know what, Malika? Yeah. I don't think so.
They should.
No reparations for those people or their ancestors. So, we got some clips that we're going to ask people to enjoy with us. One of the clips that we're going to have is, Governor J.B. Pritzker signed a bill that we worked on in Springfield to make Juneteenth a state holiday. We made Juneteenth a state holiday in Illinois before it became a federal holiday, only by days.
Well, we thank you, Rep. Ford, you and everyone that helped to push that through. Thank you for recognizing it. And we need to fight for the surviving family members of those who were enslaved for an extra 2 years. They need their reparations.
Oh my goodness.
Say it again.
So, you get that right, Malika. Yes. That's why you are so, you should be honored for your push to make sure that we teach pre-enslavement. This is all about pre-enslavement and who we were and, prior to. And so let's go to the clip where we had the bill signing in Springfield, Illinois,
Awesome.
to make Illinois.
Awesome.
Today is more than a bill signing moment for me and for all of us. It's a moment for reflection about our ancestors. I think we should take a moment of silence and recall, as the governor talked about, how black people were treated in this country. As that we pause at this moment and reflect just a little bit on how this country treated black people, but today we're here with a bipartisan bill with white people, black people, and brown people all voting for it. It shows that as much as we think we have a lot of work to do, and we do come together to do things like this to prove that it's possible for us to do a lot more. So I'll pause just for a moment for our ancestors. So, nothing I could say today could give justice to what we're about to accomplish today, and that is to sign the bill for Juneteenth. But I'll say, thank you to the governor for standing by your word. It was on June 19th, Governor J.B. Pritzker said, from the genuine criminal justice reform to a fundamentally reimagined vision of policy to sustain investment in black communities, we will build an Illinois that prioritizes justice, equality, and opportunity for all people. It's the quote of Governor J.B. Pritzker. He said he would also work to pass a law so that Illinois commemorates Juneteenth as an official holiday in Illinois, and here we are today. Thank you so very much, Governor J.B. Pritzker. And I should thank my speaker. I'm so proud to have him as the Speaker of the House, because without him, this too would have not had an opportunity to advance. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd never like to come behind Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, because she has that thunder. And thank you so much, my Senator Light, for being a leader and a role model and a mentor to me. Thank you. To me, the meaning of Juneteenth is Freedom Day. It's rooted in emancipation for the enslavement, so it involves both celebration and also joy, but also pain. June 19th marks the anniversary of the day in 1865 when the news of the Emancipation Proclamation reached Galveston, Texas, nearly 2 years after the proclamation had been issued. Today is a win for Illinois, and it's a win for our country. It's not a black holiday, it's an American holiday that we all must celebrate. The world is changing, and people of all ages are talking about Juneteenth. Don't you feel it? I know everyone in this room has been in discussions about Juneteenth, and I know everyone in this room have said and heard people say, I knew nothing about Juneteenth. I knew nothing about Juneteenth until recently. And we don't have to be ashamed of that, because it's our school systems that have failed all of us, not just black people, but also white people, brown people have been miseducated in our school system. That's why the Black Caucus and our colleagues did the inclusive history, so that that is no longer a problem. And so today in Illinois, we're doing our part, as the governor said, to build on the Black Caucus educational pillar that the governor signed to have a more inclusive history in our classrooms. This is a step in the right direction to help tell a more accurate history in America, one step toward a better understanding of the struggle of this nation, and a step closer to respecting our differences and racial harmony. And finally, to a more modern day comparison to Juneteenth. And Governor, you've done your part to help remedy it, but I want to say I can never pass up our opportunity to advocate even harder. And so when we think about the cannabis industry, let's think about the cannabis industry. And so 400 days later, there's not one black majority owner in the cannabis industry. They're behind. No different than 2 years after the emancipation, black people left behind. What a comparison. But we're so lucky that we have a governor that's going to do everything that he can to work to make sure that our social equity applicants are successful in the state of Illinois so that they can be the very best business in Illinois. Think about the comparison. And Governor, think about how we're going to work to make sure our social equity applicants don't feel the pain that black people are feeling in this country from being left behind in education and businesses and all other aspects to leave generational wealth to our families. So thank you very much, Governor, for signing this bill, and I look forward to working with all of you. And next is the Majority Leader, Senator Lightfoot, who I love dearly, and I look forward to continuing to work with her in her endeavors as a senator. Thank you.
So Malika, what we're going to see next is something that happened in Springfield at the Abraham Lincoln's Library on 6/16/2021. Governor J.B. Pritzker signed the bill that I passed in the House into law. It's now known as Public Act 1020014. Now, I give credit to all of my colleagues that supported this and my Senate sponsor, Senate Majority Leader Kimberly Lightfoot, for passing this over to the governor. The governor signed this, and he was very proud to sign this bill into law. What you think, Malika? How you feel?
I'm very happy that he signed it because, you know, with the education bill that we worked on, you know, we had some pushback from some Republicans. So I will say Governor Pritzker, he signed off on that bill for the Black Caucus agenda and Juneteenth. So, you know, we're happy.
Malika, you know what? I'm so happy I'm happy you brought up Republicans, because Republicans voted for Juneteenth to be a holiday in Illinois. They were chief sponsors. They were coming to me on the floor saying, sign me up, I want to support it. So I was able to work with Republicans and Democrats in Illinois to make sure that the history of Black people is more perfect as it's delivered to people in Illinois and across the country.
We're glad they woke up.
You know what? I'm just happy that we have proof that there are common areas that we could find, and we have to continue to work together and not fight one another in order to get things done. We could debate, but let's be open. And they were open. Republicans and Democrats came together to make Illinois one of the first states, not the first, but one of the first states to make Juneteenth a state holiday.
And it's such a good feeling when we work together, isn't it?
We got something done. And guess what? Those Republicans, they are going to enjoy their day off for Juneteenth.
Yes.
Everybody.
Republicans and
Yeah.
Democrats. See the harmony of working together. The harmony.
Hallelujah, it's done. I believe on this Son. I am saved.
The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor.
Historically, blacks were not free with any kind of communication from the government until June 19th.
Juneteenth is the day in which enslaved individuals in Texas learned that they were free.
Juneteenth is a day to pause and to reflect and to really assess where we are.
When the announcement was made, the slaves began right away to celebrate and being thankful to God for being free.
There was a time when we were not free to do what we wanted to do, couldn't go and come, families were destroyed and broken up. I think there's a lot of confusion today amongst the younger generation about what Juneteenth is and who celebrates Juneteenth.
Every year on June 19th, African Americans in Texas gather to celebrate the Juneteenth holiday. The 19th of June is a special day, a day representing freedom from slavery. It all began in 1865 when Union soldiers led by Major General Gordon Granger landed at Galveston, Texas. There, Granger stood outside Ashton Villa and announced that the Civil War had ended and that the enslaved were now free. This was 2.5 years after President Abraham Lincoln issued his Emancipation Proclamation. Granger's general order would finally free the last 250,000 slaves whose bondage had been essentially unaffected by Lincoln's proclamation.
Galveston was a very important place. It was like New York City. Galveston was a metropolis.
Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, as important as it was then, and in some ways it's become even more important as a statement of the United States since that time, it really was symbolic in many ways, because when he issued it in January 1863, it did not go into effect. In other words, the South, or the Confederates, did not free their slaves at that time.
It had little effect in Texas because communication got there kind of slow. There were no federal troops in this part of the nation, so there was nobody to enforce the Emancipation Proclamation.
I think we need to keep reminding people that that was a condition, horrible condition under which we existed for years and years and generations, and the actual end to it should be commemorated and celebrated. So it's always been a major part in my family and the community that I grew up in East Austin.
The first celebrations of Juneteenth were used as political rallies and to teach freed slaves about their voting rights. Within a short time, however, Juneteenth was marked by festivities throughout the state.
Oh, brothers, keep your lamps trimmed and burning.
Very quickly, Juneteenth became a cultural celebration.
Juneteenth, I think, caught on in the later years as blacks started to socialize more together, started to form their own conventions, whether they were church conventions, as they started to go to school, and the day became more definitive because word was slow.
Many traditions continue today. Rodeos, parades, baseball games, and barbecue are just a few of the typical Juneteenth activities. Juneteenth almost always focused on education and self-improvement.
The freedmen embraced June 19th wholeheartedly. It was a day to remember what life was like before emancipation.
Most of the festivities were held in rural areas around rivers and creeks that could provide for activities such as fishing and horseback riding. Often, church grounds would be the site for such events. In time, however, black groups collected funds to purchase tracts of land for their celebrations, including Juneteenth. A common name for these sites was Emancipation Park.
There were different locations around Austin where they would celebrate, and it was like they would come in shifts because everybody didn't get off at the same time. So you see the maids were there, the cooks were there first, the laundresses at the celebration grounds, but the chauffeurs, they couldn't leave until they got off work in the evening.
There are accounts of Juneteenth activities being interrupted and halted by white landowners demanding that their laborers return to work. However, in many cases, employers allowed their workers to take the day off, and some even made donations of food and money. For decades, these annual celebrations flourished, growing continuously with each passing year.
It was the one annual holiday that African Americans owned, and when they came to celebrate, it was a way of looking at the past, but also trying to understand the present to move to the future. And so it went beyond celebrating by having baseball games and barbecues. There also were long speeches and luminaries from the black community present to remind one of the dark past of slavery and the promises of the present.
At one time, 30,000 people gathered at Comanche Crossing in Mejia, Texas for the Juneteenth event. In the towns and cities, parades were held, and often a Juneteenth queen would be selected. In Austin, Juneteenth was first celebrated in 1867 under the direction of the Freedmen's Bureau. The Austin parade featured the Goddess of Liberty.
In 1888, they rededicated the new Capitol. And at the top of the new Capitol, they placed a Goddess of Liberty. Prior to this year, the freedmen would have these huge parades, and they would have floats with a lot of little children. Usually there were children on it representing each state. But in the Juneteenth of 1889, they elected the Goddess of Liberty. And each year after that, up until the 1930s, when it went out of vogue and they started calling her the Juneteenth Queen, they had a Goddess of Liberty.
Jaybird sitting in the top of the tree, tra-la-la-la-lee.
When Juneteenth was celebrated back when we were children, Dad would dig a hole in the ground out in the yard and put wire over that hole that he would dig and put the wood and all that down in the hole, and he'd barbecue. Well, most neighbors did that because they didn't have the barbecue pits. And you could smell it all over the community.
Big days of barbecues and all kinds of food. Good cakes. I can remember the ladies from our church. It was a big thing. All the different potato salads. I've never had so many different potato salads except on Juneteenth. But yes, I was fortunate enough to celebrate, I can remember slightly, on a site in Austin that's called Old Emancipation Park. The early celebrations always had the participation of the governor of Texas and the members of the legislature. The governor would allow the organizers of Juneteenth celebrations to shoot the cannons on the Capitol grounds. And they started firing the cannons Juneteenth morning at 4 o'clock to wake up the celebrants, to alert them that it's time to get out of the bed.
They were proud of the fact that they were free, and they were proud to teach their children about it as best that they could.
I leave it 1861 when us come to Texas. Miles were pretty good. Treat us just about like you would a good mule. Us had the hoodooism to keep mice from being mean. Us get the stick and match so many notches on it and slip up to master front steps without him seeing us and put this stick right up under his doorsteps. Every night we'll go back to the stick and drive it down a notch. By the time the last notch in the ground, it make mice so good to us. That called hoodooism. When I was set free, my master called for me and told me I was going to be free on the 19th of June. He said I could stay too, and he would give me $5 per month if I stay and help him with the crops. Some paid us and some didn't. I made musician after I was freed. I made my first fiddle out of a gourd. If I made musician before I was freed, they could not have bought me for any price. That's right, before June 19th.
Unfortunately, with changing social conditions, the popularity of Juneteenth began to decline. The Great Depression of the 1930s forced many people off the farms and into the cities to find work. In these urban environments, employers were less eager to give workers the time off to celebrate the date. Thus, unless June 19th fell on a weekend, there were very few participants available. The people in Luling, Texas celebrated Juneteenth at a big annual picnic.
They had what they called the SP picnic. The Southern Pacific Railroad would stage a picnic and have these large barbecues, and they play baseball, and people would really celebrate with dances and gatherings. So it was a big deal.
Well, what a history lesson that was.
Yes. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. I'm still learning a lot about Juneteenth. And you know, I'm not upset anymore that, you know, we didn't learn these things in school. The point is, we know it now. We know the history now. And thank you, Rep. Ford, for pushing that legislation through and making sure that everyone learns it.
Well, as I said, you know, their history must be taught accurately, and we have to be open to knowing the truth. And it's my hope that regardless to the color of your skin, that you enjoy Juneteenth, but you also take it as a day that you recognize the struggles of Black people in America, the struggles of Black people in America, and let's correct the wrongs of the past. Let's help all people heal in this country. You know, let's use Juneteenth as a day of reflection in Illinois and across this country. The stories that we just heard, they have to touch your heart and soul. And so I hope that you learn something from it and share it with your brothers and sisters so that they too can learn. And by the way, Malika, enjoy your Juneteenth holiday, because the law says that if June 19th falls on a weekend, the following Monday is a day off. And that's what's happening this June 19th. So it will be on a Monday, this 2022 will be the day. No, that's what's happening this Juneteenth day. June 19th falls on a weekend. Therefore, this nation will celebrate Juneteenth as a national holiday on Monday.
On Monday, yes. What are you going to do for your Juneteenth Monday?
Well, you know, Juneteenth Monday, I'm going to reflect. I need to learn more about this. I will take it as a time to reflect and thank the ancestors. You got to pause for a moment and be grateful for all that we have been afforded, and that which I would say is opportunity to fight on, you know, for a more perfect union. So I'm going to make sure that I talk to my daughter who's going to Howard University to make sure that she understands it, and just make sure that we continue to spread the word. We can't let this national holiday go by without changing who we are, without coming closer to the reality of what history means in our country and what it is, the true history.
It adds more to our spirit, our foundation, more to our pride, being proud, the strength, just all of what we've endured. All of what we endured and where we are today.
Yeah. So happy Juneteenth. And I hope you all enjoy the day. And it changes who you are as the days go by. This has been another episode of Chicago Hill. I'm Shawn Ford.
Malika Gardner.
All right. See you guys next time.